Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Round 11 of the Candidates Tournament. We're going to take a look at the game between Anish Giri with the white pieces. This man continues to put on a show on the second half of the tournament, and he's playing Ding Liren, the Chinese, with the black pieces. And this man, unfortunately for him, he continues to lose games. He's playing very bad chess at the moment, but let's just jump into the game. We have e4 by Anish, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. And we have a Ruy Lopez defense. Here, Ding continues with a6, and this is the Morpheus defense of the Ruy Lopez. Bishop to a4, he continues with knight to f6, a developing move. Castles by Anish, bishop to e7, and bishop takes on c6. A very unusual move here. This is the delayed exchange variation of the Ruy Lopez. And the idea is that after pawn takes on c6, you have damaged the pawn structure for black on the queen side at the expense of giving away your bishop for free. Now, every grandmaster in the world knows that if all the minor pieces and rooks and queens get traded, then this pawn endgame is winning for white. The reason for that is that these three pawns will be able to stop these four pawns here, this pawn configuration. And then this 5 against 4 that white is going to have on the king side, he will be able to create a pass pawn and win the game. But of course, before you even get to that point in the game, a lot of chess has to be played. But that is one of the main ideas behind trading your bishop for the knight like this in this position. Well, after bishop takes on c6 and pawn takes on c6, here Anish just goes for d3. He puts support to his pawn on e4, and now he's getting ready to capture on e5. So Ding goes for bishop to d6, he protects the pawn, and this is a very interesting move because you also have to calculate the ideas of what happens after pawn to d4, because you cannot take, because you go e5, winning a piece. But that's another story. Anish goes for knight b to d2, which is the other continuation here. The idea is to go knight to c4 and continue to put pressure on the e5 pawn. So here Ding goes for bishop to e6, not allowing this knight to come to c4, because then you take, pawn takes, and you actually end up dropping your pawn on e4 yourself. But here Anish plays another interesting concept. He goes knight to b3 instead. And this move at first glance doesn't make a lot of sense, because where are you going to go with this knight? c5 is well protected by this bishop, and then the knight on the rim to a5, well, that was Anish's idea. The idea is that once this knight gets to a5, it will be putting a lot of pressure on the pawns on b7 and c6. And it's not very easy to protect them. You will have to play very passive defense with moves like rook to b8 or queen to c8, because it is not easy to push this pawn forward, because you end up dropping your c6 pawn. So that was Anish's idea. Now, in this position, Ding had to make a decision. He can go ahead and castle kingside and play a very slow, boring game, and the way he's been playing this tournament, that was probably not what he wanted to do. The other option was to go for a queenside castle, and that's what he chooses. He goes here queen to e7, and he is preparing to castle on the next move. Here Anish goes knight to a5 anyways, putting pressure on the b7 pawn, and Ding protects his pawn by castling. Now obviously knight takes runs into king takes, and you lose the game. So after castle, notice that this rook is on the same line as the queen. So here, if Anish plays, for example, a move like bishop to e3, this runs into knight takes on e4, pawn takes on e4, and bishop to b4 with a double attack. The rook attacks the queen and the bishop attacks the knight. So you will end up losing a pawn. So you cannot go for this. So what Anish did in the game is, after castles, he goes queen to e2, and he gets away from this potential x-ray that could be happening here. In this position, Ding goes for bishop to g4. He pins this knight so that it can no longer move, and making the developing task of white a lot harder. Here Anish continues with c3. He wants to start expanding on the queen side with moves like b4, moves like a4, b5, open up the queen side where the black king is located. And this is the beauty when players castle to opposite sides. The games should just lead to crazy attacks, as you will see in this game. So after pawn to c3, here Ding goes for c5. He is trying to prevent any b4 from happening, but at the same time he's keeping a very good eye on the square here on d4. Now, the problem with this move is that yes, you are controlling some key squares, but it makes it now even easier for white to, in the future, be able to open up the queen side, because this pawn is going to serve as an anchor. So it moves like a3, which happened in the game, and b4 happened. This happens very quickly, and you will be able to capture on c5, bring a rook to the b file, the queen comes to b2, and everything is going to be crashing on this pawn here on b7. So this pawn, yes, you're controlling some key squares, but at the same time, you give white the opportunity to very easily and quickly open up the queen side. And notice that black hasn't even started moving his pawns here on the king side. So at the moment, it is white for choice in this game. So after this move, c5, Anish continues with a3. Now he's getting ready to go for this b4 that we just mentioned. And Ding Liren plays c6. Another very interesting move, because usually you don't want to move the pawns in front of your castle king. But this gives the flexibility now for this bishop to be able to go to c7 from where it attacks the knight on a5. So Anish just continues with b4, bishop to c7 happened, and now you're targeting this knight. So you cannot play random moves like bishop to e3 or maybe bishop to e5, because then you capture on a5, the pawn will capture, and then it will be black that would have the better pawn structure. So instead, Anish goes for knight to b3, and here Ding goes for knight to d7. It protects the pawn on c5, puts another minor piece on the queen side where it can protect the black king, but most importantly, now he's prepared to start pushing his queen side pawns so that he can get his own attack going. So after knight to d7, here Anish goes for h3, targeting this bishop, asking this bishop where he wants to go. Bishop h5 happened, and bishop to e3 by Anish. He keeps putting pressure on this pawn on c5. Now there's three pieces attacking it, the pawn, the knight, and the bishop. So here black has a decision to make. Either you protect this pawn or you go for an attack, and that's what Ding does. He goes for the throat with f5, and he gets his own attack going by sacrificing his pawn on c5. Anish goes for bishop takes on c5, and Ding plays queen to f7, attacking the knight on b3. So rook a to b1 happened by Anish. And here Ding takes the opportunity to continue to expand on the queen side, on the king side, sorry, with g5. And now he's getting ready to go g4, completely bust open the king side position here. And who knows, anything could happen in this game. But e takes on f5 happened, g4, and the problem here for black is that Anish has this very incredible resource with knight to g5 attacking the queen on f7. And when the queen takes on f5, as happened in the game, Anish was able to close the entire position with h4, and now moves like h6 don't really work because the knight comes to e4 very quickly, and you cannot play g3 because you hang your bishop on h5. So a very good move, this h4, closing the entire king side, and now you're able to continue your attack with moves like knight to e4 and bishop to d6, or maybe even knight to d6, trading some of the pieces, maybe a4, b5, continue to open up the position. In this same structure that we have now, Ding took about 22 minutes to play his next move, and he was down to about 13 minutes to continue the rest of his game. So if you learn nothing else from this game that we're showing right now, is that when your opponent gets so very low on time, you want to be able to play the most difficult moves for them, and also not play fast, which works into their advantage. Here Ding played this move b6, and the engine hates this move. The reason for that is that you don't really need to move this bishop from here, because actually taking it, as happened in the game, will end up opening up your queen side where you will get checkmated. So in this position, the engine, the best move recommended by the computer, is to go bishop back to e3 and just play a normal slow position with remaneuvering your knight to e4 and then going for a4, a5, opening up the queen side this way. But Anish, knowing that Ding down at this in this moment to just 13 minutes to play his next 18 moves, plays the most challenging continuation, and he goes for knight to e4. And Ding, surprisingly, because in the previous move he spent so much time, apparently he did not consider this move, because After b6 and knight to e4, he ended up taking another 4 moves to just recapture this bishop, which is a complete blunder in this position. He should have gone for rook to e8, continue to centralize his pieces, and not worry about opening up his queenside here. Anish took the pawn on c5, and now moves like queen to b2, knight to a5 are going to come in, and this king is going to get checkmated. So in this position, after b takes on c5, Ding plays knight to f6. He wants to trade this very important knight here, but at the same time, he wants to give this king some room to be able to escape to the king side in case he needs to. Here, Anish continues. He goes knight to d6. He wants to remove the last defender in front of the king. So bishop took on d6. Notice that there's a nasty little fork here on f5, so you cannot just run away with the king because then your queen drops. So he had to take pawn took and rook took on d6. And here Anish continues to put pressure. At this moment in the game, Ding was down to around 3:30 to 4 minutes on the clock, and Anish plays this incredible move, pawn to d4. The idea is that you're opening up this diagonal to take on a6 and crash on the queen side here. There's a lot of checks. You're going to end up picking up a bunch of material, but at the same time, you're threatening to take here on e5 with the queen. And if the queen takes, you're going to be able to recapture with your pawn, and then there's going to be this fork, and you will be able to regain your material back. Ding tries to solve his problems by playing pawn to c5, and now this rook protects the pawn on a6. But Anish continues with knight takes on c5. Now there's going to be a lot of nasty threats around this black king here. And after rook to e8, Anish just goes a beautiful, quiet, nasty, dirty move, queen to c4, and there's going to be a lot of discovery attacks here when this knight moves out of the way. This king is hopeless here on this square on c8, and in this position, Ding Liren ended up resigning the game. And Anish at the moment is just half a point behind Nepo, and tomorrow he's going to be playing Caruana, and it's going to be an interesting match because Caruana actually is behind Nepo by a whole point and behind Anish by half a point. So he's going to have to play for a win. And if he overextends, it's going to give Anish, playing with the black pieces tomorrow, an opportunity to put pressure and maybe even win that game if Caruana ends up overstepping his boundaries. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys liked the game. As always, stay safe. Have a great day. Show respect to your opponent. See you on the next one.